Good morning. When I walked in this morning, I said, "Oh, is Damien going to be here to do our reading?" And he's with almost 30 people that are in China for a couple weeks on a wonderful trip. So we just know they're having a great time. Paul and I just had a almost 3-week trip to Halifax, the St. Lawrence Seaway in Canada and Quebec, and it was really wonderful. But I knew that I'd be doing this talk, and I have a class on Emma Curtis Hopkins. So the last 4 days of our trip, I was reading Emma over and over and over again. And her message is always, everything's good all the time. So hopefully that'll show up in this talk this morning, because it's the journey of surrender. You know, surrender is probably one of the most misunderstood terms on the spiritual path. It comes from the Buddhist teachings and also is related to some Islamic term, the one of submission. But surrender and submission are very simple concepts, but it's basically let go and let God. Many of us don't want to let go of power and control until sometimes our life feels like it's been smashed to pieces, and we're kind of in a delirium of, oh my gosh, how did this happen? Something so traumatic gets our attention, and it shows us that no matter how hard we try to control things, it just isn't our task. We're really not in control. But we can still cling to the idea that we can do it, we can change it. It'll all work out if we just stay in control. Well, when it comes to relationships, many of the problems that can show up are because of control issues. I'm trying to control you, you may be trying to control me. I may think you're the problem, you may think I'm the problem. And so in a relationship, when things are at that stage, power and control are really something to look at. Finding peace in a fractured relationship always starts with acceptance. Accepting each person for who they are, accepting them for how they grew up, how they do life, accepting them for the good things and the things that irritate us. For instance, many years ago actually, when I was divorced before I met my wonderful husband Paul, I was dating, and I was dating this one person, and he loved to dance, and I loved to dance. He had a boat, and I loved to be on the water. And he owned his own business, and I thought, well, this is really cool. But then I came to find out that he was quite the controller, and he was also an avid gambler. Well, at that time, I was new to this philosophy, and I was using it as a litmus test for dating. Is this really the kind of relationship that would work for me? And at that time, Dr. James Golden, who was the minister here at the time, he gave a talk on how to fix other people. And you probably know what he's going to say about that. But he said our relationships with people are based on our depth of knowledge and awareness and compassion and love. And we see beauty and joy in other people to the degree we see beauty and joy in ourselves. So when a relationship isn't going well, or you're questioning, is this the relationship for me? The golden rule in metaphysics is leave people alone. Don't try to fix them. They are who they are. And that he was so adamant about this. It's a waste of time to try and fix other people. Who do you know who they're supposed to be? It's sometimes hard to figure out who we are and how we're doing. So how can we be so judgmental of other people? So for me at that time, I was observing all this and thinking, trying to change this person is probably not going to be very easy. He wants to change me? No, I'm not going to be. I'm who I am. And so I was balancing all this, and when I've watched other people try to fix each other, it can be very painful, and it can lead to depression that you love this person, but if they would only change, you'd love them more. But thanks to Dr. James, I surrendered to what was and appropriately decided, bye-bye, have a good life. It was the best thing I did. Because surrender isn't passive, it sees the reality before us and where we need to take action. So I think that's the most important thing to realize. The spiritual path is never one that allows us to get run over by someone else. You know, I was thinking of kayaking down the Sacramento River, not that I've ever done it or ever will do it, but that is something about surrender. We steer and control the kayak. We don't want to end up on the rocks or getting caught up in weeds, but we can't control the flow of the river, even no matter how hard we want to. So if we fight the river, how fast it's going, which is amazingly fast, we might as well just sit on the riverbank and watch it go by. So the trick is to accept things the way they are, to submit to the current situation, which in that case would be the flow of the river. That way we easily get pulled along with the grace of God. So it makes life much easier. And then I was doing a lot of research, and I came across this great article on the internet by a lady by the name of Lisa Sullivan. She wrote an article about spiritual surrender. She calls it the link to living a peaceful life. Just like Eckhart Tolle, spiritual surrender is about living in the present moment, not in the past and not in the future. And to stop worrying about the future, being totally in the present moment. This is where, through our the creative presence that we have in our mind about our thoughts and beliefs, that's where our future is created. So we're creating it in the present moment. And she wrote, "When I'm in a state of surrender, my perfect thoughts are always, 'Thy will be done.'" Now she came to this in a really difficult way. She was an incessant worrier. She grew up in a household riddled with fear because her dad was an insurance agent. Sorry, Sherry, but her dad was an insurance, so is Sherry, an insurance agent. But her dad was an insurance agent, and he was always on the lookout for what could go wrong. What could go wrong? Had her and her family in a perpetual state of fear. He was always trying to stop anything bad from happening. So it was a big issue in her family, and she never felt safe, even as an adult. She ended up being depressed. She ended up as a child having panic attacks. What could happen that I can't control? And only through a continued practice as an adult of being in the present moment, surrendering to the present moment, where nothing bad is happening, did she find her way through this. The breaking point in her life came when her son joined the military just a few days before 9/11. She was faced, as mothers are, with their sons going to war. So just as she was writing this article on surrender, her son calls and says, "Hey, Mom, I'm filling out a form for the Army, and they want to know the cemetery in our town where I want to be buried." Whoa. Whoa. Well, of course. That was really hard. That was probably one of the ugliest moments she said she had, even thinking that she could lose her son. But she got herself back into control by going with God, going with the flow of life with God, who she believed intently watched over her and kept her safe after growing up in a childhood of fear. You know, her article reminded me of Judge Thomas Troward, who I dearly admire. His books are a little challenging to read, but when I read a book about Troward, I learned that when his son Rupert went to the Army in World War I, 1915, things were pretty they aren't as 1915, you just know. That was a really tough war for soldiers. And he wrote his son a letter, and I thought I'd read part of it to you. "Dear Rupert, put your whole trust in him and fear not. He that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. Keep a constant dwelling in thought upon the continual presence of God, with you and around you. And remember Christ's words. The kingdom of heaven is within you. Find God first in yourself, and you will find him everywhere else you go. And Rupert returned safely from the war. So back to Lisa's article. She's overcome this, my son wants to know what cemetery. She said, if we can live each moment and not worry about what might happen in the future, that's really spiritual surrender. If we can look at our life up to this point and not judge it good or bad, to really see that everything happened in a perfect way, that's spiritual surrender. If we worry about the past and rehash our life, we're really a prisoner to the past. So what is going on in the present moment if we're still hanging out in the past? Marianne Williamson wrote a book called Return to Love. I'm sure most of you have read it. And she wrote, surrender means the decision to stop fighting the world and love it instead. I loved her comment as a presidential candidate about that. It was beautiful. So it's a gentle way to relax, to feel love in your heart, to feel spiritually surrendering to life. One of the things you'll often hear around here is what you resist persists. And it's really true. What we resist persists. Because when we're resisting something, we're giving it energy. And thanks to the law of cause and effect, whatever we give energy comes back to us. We attract more of it. And so when you hear that, what are you resisting? Because you're generating more energy for it to persist. We have a wonderful, wonderful committee called the Bliss Team. And like any committee, and like even being on the board, you have all these personalities. They're all different, and they think differently, and they have different ideas. But I always get the minutes from the Bliss Team's meetings, and they're beautiful. No one person is in control. No one person says it's going to be my way or the highway. And when you're in a group like that, where you're open to feeling and thinking and just contemplating what could be, so many wonderful things happen. And so the lack of control in that meeting, I don't want to say lack of total control, but the lack of individual personal control has brought forth so many new ideas and wonderful expressions. And so that's another avenue of surrender. Sometimes if I'm in a meeting, and I know in my history of management in companies, sometimes you want to control it a little bit, and then you find the best results when you back off and let everyone feel part of it. On the Deepak Chopra Center website, one of their educators explains it this way. Surrender in a spiritual context means to give up everything that no longer serves us. That no longer serves us. Stop struggling against what is that resistance. Let go of the smallness in life and embrace life in totality. In the Vedic text, spiritual surrender is referred to as the joy of surrender. It's a positive feeling when we let go, a positive feeling. Because we stop trying to force things, situations. Because our ego does love to be in control. But what Deepak Chopra calls us to do is to accept the wisdom of uncertainty, the wisdom of being uncertain about how life might be. That's when we fully connect with the source. And then stop trying to control the future. We let the unlimited potential come to serve us. So I've talked a lot about it, about surrender. But how do you do it really? Do you just sit back and go, okay, God, let her rip, whatever will happen? And so Chopra offers us a few ideas. We must have faith because our belief in the divine's existence is a big part of that. Of course, everyone here believes that. But I meet people every week who don't. What do you mean God's real? What do you mean there's this divine energy, this law of cause and effect? And so he says we must have faith, including in your spiritual teachers. He says include your spiritual teachers in those that you have faith in. But then he said we also need patience. Oh, that's a good one. Faith and patience complement each other. Both ends up being a cause as well as an effect. When you have faith, you also have patience. When you have patience, you also have faith. Cause and effect. I hadn't thought of it in that way. Just that in itself is a good code of conduct for us. Then he says we have to be aware of what's happening, not blind to what's happening, not judgmental about what's happening, but just having an awareness. Like the fellow I was dating so many years ago. Controller. No, maybe that isn't what I was seeing. Oh, yes, it was. Well, maybe it's just a situation. Oh, no, it was real. So being aware is very important. And then meditation, of course. That is the single most powerful tool you can use when you're thinking about this. Am I in a relationship where I'm being controlling, where someone else is being controlling? Am I in a relationship that needs some assistance in finding our way together or separate? It's that silent space between our thoughts where spirit comes in. I hear it all the time. If I can be silent enough, I ask the question, I meditate, I listen, and I get a response. The last step is letting go. We just sit back and let go. I know I've been in meetings where I said, well, my thought is and everybody's my thought, and I'm like, Mary, just shut up. Just listen. You know, you might learn more than trying to always put your ideas forward. It's about allowing everybody the space to speak their truth. And then the key word for this is trust. Trust and surrender go hand in hand. And it's like planting a seed. You know, we talk about the creative process as seed, soil, plant. We plant a seed in our mind, we focus on it. It goes into subconscious mind where we water it with continued focus on that. And from that, a plant comes to happen in an experience. We call it a manifestation. And that seed in the soil becomes a plant in harmony with our deepest thoughts of trust, allowing our meditative practices. And I was thinking about Ernest Holmes. I was looking through The Science of Mind. There's only 3 references to surrender. I thought that was interesting. And I'm not going to read them. But what it made me remember was his last talk at Asilomar in 1959. It was called Sermon by the Sea. And I wanted to share part of it with you because spiritual surrender is important in every aspect of our life. He said, find me one person who is for something and against nothing, who is redeemed enough not to condemn others out of the burden of his soul, and I will find you an exalted human being. Why? Because he will have revealed to me the nature of God and proved the possibility of all human souls. So it's through this process of surrender that we literally come to experience a life without limits, infinite potentiality. It can bring true lasting joy, fulfillment, and inner peace in our life. And so I encourage you, if there's anything you're resisting, judging, doubting, a little bit of surrender will go a long way. So let's pray about that. And I surrendered this morning to the knowledge that we have in every prayer that we give, that there is only one thing going on here in this existence, and that is the experience and the energy of God. I call it God Universal Intelligence, this energy that encompasses all. And we are part of that. And each one of us has been created as an individual expression of that. And so this morning, I am thrilled to share the idea of spiritual surrender. It's not to another person, it's to our God self. The truth about ourselves, the truth about the creative process, the truth that we are divine beings on this incredible journey in this life, finding our way home to the loving arms of the One. So I accept that for myself and everyone here this morning, because it can be easy when we do it in the will and the knowledge and the love of God. So I give great thanks for all the wisdom that I've shared this morning from so many people, including myself, knowing that it unfolds beautifully in your life as you wish it to be. And for this we say, thank you, God, and so it is. Thank you.